So everyone, welcome to the Gentle Art Podcast with Gene Dunn. Today I have the real privilege and pleasure to sit with my best friend from childhood. When I was 13 years old, 14 years old, we were thick as thieves. So the saying goes. I think it was pretty innocent, but my friend Hector Massari. Let's give him a nice welcome.
Thank you.
Listen, man, I'm so inspired to have you on, and I'm so thrilled that we kind of reconnected like a lot of people through Facebook, or actually through your sister, and through some experiences, and nearly 40 years later, like we have this beautiful friendship and this relationship that continues on, and I'm just so happy to have you on. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really, like you said, life basically takes us in different directions, and then I'm glad that we were able to reconnect. I am every time I talk about you to like some of my friends, even the jiu-jitsu community or outside the jiu-jitsu community, I basically tell them what the accomplishments and what you have been able, excuse me, let me turn this off, what you have been able to do with your life as far as jiu-jitsu and where you have taken martial arts. And when I invited you to my wedding, that I truly appreciate, because I remember correctly, it'll be 6 years this October. You
Right.
made it to my wedding. You flew from California to New York, then you got in your car and you drove almost 3 hours to my wedding. That's like insane. And I appreciate that, my brother.
I wouldn't have missed that thing for the world, buddy.
So even to this day, the people that when I sat you at the table, I sat you specifically with people that you had something in common. So my friend Eva Forrest and her husband are both Shotokan black belts. They're both black belts under Sensei Mori that has since he passed on a couple of years ago. So
high level guy, really.
Yes, and they always ask me about you. Hey, how's your friend Gene? How is he doing? I say he's doing good. He's doing good. I told them about your podcast. I told them that they should check you out, and also that I said go into Facebook and look at some of the meditation, the motivation. So definitely. I'm happy to be here, and I'm ready. I'm ready to basically. Let's get on. Let's talk about your article, and let's see. We could dive right into this.
So you and I were chatting a little bit. You had called. You were in the city visiting your mom, and you had called to just kind of check in on me, and we had this nice conversation. And I said to you, I wrote this article about manhood, and it was published today. It was published on Thrive Global, and you and I had this really, I think, a fascinating discussion about manhood. And I was like, you had said something so great. You were like, you know what it is that like you and I grew up in New York City without a dad, and we had to like search for our own kind of like version, or our own inspiration, if you will, for how to be a man. And that was kind of, I was like, funny you should say that. Like, I just wrote this article, and, I was going through all the different ways in which, I kind of kept bumping in to manhood, what it means, what it didn't mean. And I want to just kind of start out by like saying, I think my first memory of you, Hector, is that, we lived in the same building. And I lived on the 5th floor, right below the roof, and your mom and you and your brother lived on the 2nd floor, right?
Yes.
Second floor. 2G?
I think it was 2C.
2C, and I was 5C, right?
Yes.
We were on the same line. And like, I remember one day there was like this big commotion on the roof. Like you could hear it in those older buildings. You could hear like anybody stepping on the roof. And like I think you and a bunch of friends were like up there. And I was like scared. Like I was like, you know, you were this kind of, I didn't know you well at that time. And you were up there with a bunch of like high school friends. You were older than me. And like, I remember being very scared that something bad was going to happen to me, even though I was in my house. And like, that kind of set, I think that was like the feeling in some ways for me in my early like childhood and teens in New York City. Like it was really dangerous. And even like you could be in your house and it would still feel very dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. Because back then, even though that people look at what's going on in the world now with all the protesting and riots and this, when we were growing up, a lot of that existed. There was also racial tension. There was, uh, I remember, you remember, I used to have this big boom box.
Yeah, man.
I used to have this big boom box, and you know everybody was carrying a boom box, but people were getting robbed for boom boxes, for jackets, for sneakers. I mean,
I don't know.
so
I don't know if you remember, but you lent me that boombox, and I got robbed for that boombox. I was heartbroken. You remember that?
no, I remember the boom box. I don't remember that experience, but it was it it. You know
It was
what it is?
tough.
Like you said, we, even though that I was a little older, we basically connected. We got along really well. And some of the things that we had in common, that you know, we're both boys. We both like, you know, we want to be mischievous and do things, but at the same time, your mom worked really hard. My mom worked really hard. So that's basically what we had. We had two mothers that were basically working as hard as they can to make ends meet. And, you know, you and I are, in essence, we kind of race ourselves.
That's
Like
right.
if you look at yourself and I look at myself, um, there was accountability there, and that's from our parents, from our moms. But I didn't, you know, I would get away with murder because my mother was, you know, half the time she was sleeping because she was tired. So I would be able to
The other
get in
half, she was
trouble,
working.
do things.
Yeah, 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 man. You know, I can remember like in our neighborhood, there were some guys that like I was like trying to, I guess, learn from. Like there was this guy Gene Rice who was an
Hmm.
older man in the neighborhood, and like you know, I think, you know, ultimately I think he did some nice things for me, but he was it was a weird guy. He wasn't like, he didn't have any attachments. And like, you know, I can remember trying to like learn from these men on the street, and like, and also I was thinking about this, like even back then, like I remember you and I kind of having a dress code, you know, like it was like Lee jeans,
Yes, yes,
like felt Pumas, like
yes,
those green or black with white Pumas, like a La Tigre shirt, a belt,
yes.
like you dressed in a way like to align yourself with a certain community. And I think like we felt like not only connection but protection from in those ways. And like I just, you know, I can just remember like thinking like, I don't know how to do it, man. I don't like, you know, like we were bumping into all kinds of things then.
I think that their experience of growing up in, like you said, 70s and 80s in New York City, I think it opened our eyes and it exposed you to the men that were today. Um, the lessons that you learn in their experiences, there's no book or school that you could learn those things. You have to actually experience them and live them. Um, it, it was a it was a tough childhood, but I wouldn't go back and change anything.
Yeah. I feel the same.
Um,
Let me ask you, like, what's one thing that you think about now, like that you kind of learn from the street, you know, from you know, not having a dad, from a mom that worked hard, and like we were hanging out, we were partying, we were interacting, you know, in the 1980s in New York City. Like, what's one thing that you thought then was like a good representation of like manhood or being tough or like.
I think a good representation
Like, what did
what
you?
I thought of what I
Yeah,
thought being a man was. Do you remember the two guys that used to live on the first floor? Jim Santa,
I do remember Jim Santa.
him and roommate. They were, they were
Harmon.
tough. They
His
would
name was
work
Harmon.
out. They always had all these girls over. They would basically, we would talk to them. So in my head, that's what being a man. That's what I should strive to be.
Like what? Having a bachelor pad with chicks come over,
Yes, yes,
like partying and being buff, right?
yes, yes.
I think I remember us talking one time about like, I remember one summer you and I were like, yo, we're just gonna like work out all the time. And like by next summer, by the following summer, we're gonna be jacked and we're gonna be.
Yes, yes. Listen, I remember uh, talking about that, going back to what we were talking about, and thinking about father figures. Do you remember when you DJ and I helped you DJ?
We were both
I think it was
DJs.
the birthday party
And for
for
Jim
that guy, for Jim.
yeah.
Um,
No, it was a birthday party for the guy, I think, who drew uh, that
that Rigby, wasn't it
yeah,
Rigby?
Rigby. That's right. He drew for page 6 on the New York Post. And
Yes,
he made
yes.
his party 2 years in a row, right? Yeah. So you were
Um,
saying,
so I definitely I remember Gene from the studio. He was almost like the mayor of 84th Street where we grew up. Everybody knew him. He had a lot of connections. A lot of people don't realize, and I didn't realize until I got older, that when we were growing up, there were some serious people that we actually ran into, but either we didn't know enough back then or we didn't think about it. If you remember in that studio, when MTV first started, they used to do commercials, they used to do music videos.
that's right.
Remember that guy Scott that used to work there in the second floor? He used to do he used to do the mixing board.
Yeah.
They had Duran there back in the day. The guy that owned the place, James Jimmy Miller, was a producer for the Sticky Fingers albums of the Rolling Stones.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
that guy knew Lou Reed. I mean, like there were famous artists that would frequent that place, but you knew a lot more than me of who was who. Like, I had no clue that, these guys were like superstars. They were like rock stars.
Yeah, Jimmy Miller, I have a famous story about Jimmy Miller. I didn't, growing up, especially, but like I've loved the Rolling Stones my whole life.
Yes, yes.
Since I was 8, since I was 7, and I didn't realize that Jimmy Miller was the Stones producer. Like I thought,
Yes.
I knew him as Jimmy Miller, the guy who owned this recording studio / video studio on our block, right? And one day when I was like 10 or 11, I used to do odd jobs around that place to make a little bit of money. And he called me into his house and he sat me down and he like, I don't know if you remember being up there, but like he had this large video screen.
Yes,
And
yes, that I remember.
he's like, Gene, I want you to look at this band and tell me what you think. They want me to produce them. Now, I didn't really have an idea. I didn't like, it was probably 1980 or 1981. And he played this video, right? And I turned to Jimmy Miller and I said, he was like, what do you think? And I was like, they ain't no Rolling Stones. And he threw his head back in laughter. He like burst out laughing. And you know who the video was? AC/DC, bro. Could you imagine it? I was like, I was dogging AC/DC for the Rolling Stones to Jimmy Miller. But he was another guy that I was like looking to for like cues on how to be a man, but he was a mess, man. He was like,
the alcohol got the best of him.
He like, yeah, like he lost that place. It was bad news. It was bad news. But yeah, there was a lot of important people around at that time too. Yeah. Scott, Scott introduced me to Frank Rocchio. Do you remember Frank Rocchio?
The name sounds familiar. I got to try to put a face to the name.
It was his wife's ex-husband who owned the Peppermint Lounge in the World, and we used to go down there.
Yes. I remember. We used to go there and be on the guest list. Now I remember. Yes.
Remember, I was like 13, 14. You were like 16, 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Listen,
cool.
I think I might have been with you when we saw the Ramones at the World.
New Year's Eve.
Yes, we saw the Ramones live.
That's right.
We got in there. We were in the guest list. Yes.
Right. So coming back in, like, how did you realize that like these points about manhood that we learned from the street were not working for you? Like, what did you get?
Like I said, going back, digressing, my role of what being a man is what I saw. So basically what the society portrays, big muscles, being tough, having all the ladies, having a bachelor's pad. So when I go through life like that, as I start getting older and I become a man, that we don't have there's no manual on how to be a man.
Manual, that's a good one.
Yeah. How to be a man. So as I get older and I see that I've got in trouble, I had an attitude, and I thought that, I need to, you need to all the time be like an alpha male. And as I got older, I realized, you want to know something? That's wrong. That's a sign of my own insecurity.
Yeah.
That I have to basically portray this this outward show to the world. Don't talk to me, don't look at me. And as soon as I became a father, I realized that all that toughness and all that stuff goes away, because part of being a parent, you have something that's called unconditional love.
Yeah.
And what is unconditional love? I didn't understand it until I became a parent. Is that unconditional love is that you're willing to basically give your life for another human being that happens to be your child. That's a very, very deep connection. And as soon as my daughter was born, some of the things that I could never even think of doing, I would do. Like I would go to like Girl Scouts, or what they call the brownies. And, I'm the only man there because their mother at that time was working. And my daughter says, "Oh, Dad, we gotta, today what we're doing nails." So I would let her paint my nails.
Yeah, beautiful.
When I was younger, I would never be caught in a place like that. I definitely understood the connection between what a father figure in a young man or a young woman's life does, and a lot of it I had to learn on my own.
The same way.
Let me give you an example. You own a vehicle, you drive, and I drive. Who taught you how to change a tire? Nobody taught me. So you have to figure these things out. Who taught you how to drive?
Nobody.
Fishing. Have you ever been fishing?
You and I took a joyride in a car once, and I watched you drive. Do you remember that the floor was out?
Yes.
This car had no floor, bro. I had to put my
learning how to shoot a basketball, learning how to throw a ball, So I saw it. I miss a lot of those things that basically mold me into what I think a young man should be. So it took me a while. But then when I realized it, it almost it was like trial and error. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I had my oldest daughter, and I basically made some mistakes. And then, you know, when I had my other child, I basically learned from those mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's basically how I did it. It was difficult.
I got a couple of questions. Like one is, well, first, this one's not a question, but I want to say, you know, I was thinking about when we were going to get into this, like how much courage you have. Like I haven't been able to do that. Like you know, part of me wanted to break this cycle of abuse that, like, you know, I experienced, and like I couldn't saddle up to having children. You know, I did it in other ways. Like I had this karate school, I had these jiu-jitsu schools where, like, you know, hundreds of thousands of children, hundreds and thousands of children were benefiting in a way from what I was doing. But like I just couldn't do it. So, you know, I applaud your courage, man. I think it's really, really, really courageous and really beautiful that you were able to take that step, even though you and I didn't have dads. It's really amazing. My question to you is, like, before we kind of delve in, I want to know about unconditional love, but you know, how much of like the alpha male attitude was cultural for you? Like, how did you
Oh,
have to like break through like this Latin
oh,
Latin like
you absolutely. In the Latin culture, and I have a double whammy. My mother's Dominican, so Latin, 100% Dominican, and my father was my father was born in Puerto Rico, but he was first generation. My grandfather was from Sicily. My grandmother was from Spain. So if you look at
still.
Dominican, Sicilian, highly homophobic,
Mhm.
highly machismo. I mean, that's almost an acquired trait that is ingrained into you. You
Yeah.
know, how many girlfriends you have? I mean, so it's definitely
So that there must have been a lot of work to just kind of break out of that and go into this, you know, area where, you know, like you said, like you had to soften up. You had to let your daughter paint your nails, and like it means like you love her. It's like the best expression of manhood.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. It took a lot of work. It's work that you got to do yourself. It's basically dealing with your own insecurities, dealing with a lot of people. The majority of people are always worried. What are people going to say about me? What do people think?
Mm-hmm.
And once I think you break away from what do people think about you, uh, you become free. You become free to explore things.
Hector, how do you think like discovering unconditional love for your daughter or your daughters informed you on being more of a complete man now? Like I understand that, like, you give them this unconditional love, but I'm watching you, man. Like I know you. Like it permeated into these other areas of. I mean, you're still a big guy. You're still a tough guy. You're still one of the toughest men I know. Like starting jujitsu at your stage at a school which is
Oh,
ultra.
listen. I started jujitsu at 47.
Uh-huh. 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 So yeah, and not in a very tough,
Yes,
you know,
yes, yes.
rigorous school. No,
This is old school Brazilian
yeah,
jiu-jitsu
yeah, yeah,
in a basement. It was in a basement. My first school when I started.
yeah. So how does that start to inform you? Like how do you go like, oh wait, I can be loving with my daughter, and then like you're transition into being a softer, loving, more gentle, kinder man. How does that happen for you?
Well, one of the things that I basically looked at, I have my daughters, and I looked at the way that society actually looks at women. And I love all types of music. You look at my playlist, I listen from classical music to rock and roll to reggae to rap music, old school rap. So if you look at women in general in videos, they're always like objectified as sex items. They're in rap music, the way that they're spoken about is, you know, in a very disrespectful manner. So then when I look at my daughters, I'm like, you know, I don't want them to be treated like that. I want them to basically go into society and basically be productive members, use their own heads, make their own decisions. And my job is to basically teach them what's right and wrong, give them the tools, not influence them on what my beliefs are, let them see what the world has to offer to them. And basically from there, they make their own decisions with the knowledge that every decision has a consequence.
So did you like look at like culturally the way that men are behaving for women and started to like stop doing like no
Yes,
longer
absolutely.
like
Listen, one of the things that I learned a long time ago, that words that you say to children resonate for a very, very long time. That's why there's so many people in therapy that are that are messed up in the head. So what happens is, I never told my daughter, because if you look at language is both hearing and basically body language.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I never ever said to them, but especially to the little one, is I never said, don't do this, don't do that, don't, you know, everything's don't. So you program the brain to not to ever do anything and be scared of things.
That's
So
right.
I would always tell her, be careful. I always chose my words. You know, she's jumping around uh, in the playscape. Oh, you know, she'll say, oh, daddy, look. I said, yes, but be careful. Good job. So I always encourage them, listen, you could do whatever you want. As long as you put the work in,
Yeah.
you could basically do whatever you want. You could be whatever you want. You could figure anything that you want out. Don't corner yourself up. Oh, you know, girls shouldn't be doing this. This is only for guys. Or I should basically like things or study something that, you know, that not a lot of that women go into that field, not men. I said, if you basically separate yourself from that, you have opportunities to do anything that you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, and 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 I think that that was important. That was an important message that I basically sent out to them, and I think it definitely worked.
How important do you think the father's role in, you know, because you had said that to me, you had said like, you know, I think that the father's role in a child's development is so important. And then with the second part, like, what would you say to men that like are not being good dads? Like how what do you got to say about that?
What I would tell them, I unequivocally, 100%, 1,000% would tell them that when they get older, would regret it,
Yeah.
regret it. I look at people that they said, I wish I could have done something different, but they were just thinking about themselves. Because um, us human beings in nature, we're egocentric in nature. Is, you know, give me, give me, give me, give me. You know, I want this. You know, it's very hard for you to basically put someone else in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's, you know, that we're, and a lot of people don't think like that, but I think it's crucial. If you want a well-adjusted, well-developed young man or young woman, fathers need to be involved.
That's yeah, man.
I mean, fathers need to be involved. Listen, just I'm gonna give you an example. I remember this is an experience that I had with Brian Richback, a mutual friend of ours.
Yeah.
We were probably I was in high school, and we used to play football together. So we went to offense defense camp in Fairfield, Connecticut, at Fairfield University, and they would have pros come and teach us. And I remember Lawrence Taylor was one of the pros that was there. And I met Lawrence Taylor. So you go there for a week and, they work you out, they teach you all these things. And then on the last day, you suit up and then you have a game and your parents come. I felt so bad that when I looked at the stands, I had no one. The only person there that showed up was Brian's father.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I sit back and I look at all these kids, all their dads are here. And those are things, I'm talking about
man,
years ago.
There was no one,
yeah.
I mean, yes. And how about like your high school graduation or your grammar school graduation like the really important events, like you look over and there's no one there.
Oh, yeah, there's no one there.
I know, man. Look.
But like, like share some of your experience, because you had a very, very interesting experience. I would love to hear from your experience, because it's your story to tell, the way that you came from the South, that you actually came to New York with your mother. And when you really look at it, I look at you as a survivor. That's what you are. You're someone that basically, you were dealt these cards and you basically you overcame and survived and thrived.
Hector, what's really important for me is to have, like, see, you were there. You were in that apartment on 84th Street, like the one room, and you saw, our moms like did their best, right? But like you saw and experienced the poverty. You saw and experienced the isolation. You saw and experienced, that neighborhood, there were predators walking around. There were predatory men, and there were gangs, and there were lots and lots and lots of like weird stuff going on.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's so important for me to have, like, for many reasons, but to have someone in my life that like I experienced some of that stuff with. And, I know that it was difficult for you, like, because your dad, I remember that your dad like was pretty well to do. And
yes, my father, you want to know an interesting story, and I'll make it quick. My father had pharmacies in Puerto Rico. My father had a wife.
Yep.
So my mother, in essence, was like my father's mistress.
Yep.
Because he had two kids. He had myself and my brother, my younger brother. My sister was from a different father.
Yep. Yeah, I've thought about that, like how difficult that was. Like, I'll get to my dad and kind of my experience, and thank you. But like how difficult that must have been to know that this guy was over there, and he had means, and we were poor, man. Like, and one of the worst things for me was like we were zoned. Like Julia Richmond was not the best high school in the world, right? But it was in a neighborhood that was very well to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And we were zoned in for schools that had some of the most wealthy kids in the world. And to look and know that, like, you can realize how much you don't have when there's a comparative. And so I've thought about you, like how difficult that must have been for you to like know that there's this guy who's got means and he's your dad and he's not providing. And then what courage that it took for you to step into that role, like, is massive, man. It's like, I'm so in awe of you. And then to like, just like, not only step into the role, but you yourself thrive and you yourself let it inform you. to being a better man. I like, hats off to you, man. Like,
Thank you, thank you. But you know, it's a work in progress.
yeah,
It takes a lot of work, and you know, nothing in life is easy.
yeah. I look, I remember my one Christmas. My dad did not ever, ever take care of us. Like, he had no, like, he, like, I think when I think back, I think like he must have had me to keep my mother so that he could like run some bullshit scam on some money that she had from her previous marriage or the kids had. And that was, once that was gone, there was like no use for me. And like I think like one Christmas, like he must have felt guilty, and he sent a check for like, I don't know what, $75, $50, and he earmarked it for Christmas. And my mother opened up the letter or the envelope, and she was like, what the fuck? Like, and she like tore it up in front of me, and she was like, his money, like, for Christmas, what about for food? And that experience, like knowing that, and then like bumping into all of these weird dudes, like you and I were talking about this the other day. Did you remember this guy that showed up in our neighborhood one summer? He was from Puerto Rico, and he like told this, he was a junkie, and he like told this story about how he worked at the morgue, and they caught him doing inappropriate stuff.
Yes, yes, yes. I might remember.
Yeah, these dudes that we were like bumping into that were so weird, and like we didn't, that was the pool to choose from. These were like the experiences we were having. These were like the people that came in and out of our lives being on the street, like, in 1979, 1980, 1981. And so bumping into all of those things and all of these people and all these different mentalities, and then trying to make sense of it was, I mean, like nearly impossible, and I just had to fail so much. Like, I thought I was doing good until like 42, 43 years old. I mean, I had 5 schools, I had money, I had these great experiences, I was traveling and da 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 da. And then like I started to kind of realize, well, wait a second, like I'm not so happy here. Like 44, 45, I'm like, whoa, like I'm looking at the other end of my life, and this isn't enough for me. And so like, and then I started having these back-to-back failures. And I was wondering, like, what's going on? Like, why can't I like kind of catch my breath? And I realized that like, I just have some really poor strategies that are no longer working. Like, I was able to kind of like force myself, or like, kind of outsmart some things, or like whatever, like manipulate, and it was no longer working because I was growing in a way that was not conducive to those mentalities. So I had to like figure out, I had to actually like reinvent myself again, like almost find a new dad, a new father, like, because all the ones that I was kind of like using in my mind they were dying. They were really dying.
And that takes a lot of courage, Gene, because if you look at it, you have the schools, you have the money, you're traveling, and you have all these material things, and then and then you wonder, I have all these things, how come I'm not happy? So it's when you start looking at things and you start looking at what's important and experiences, uh, life basically sometimes throws us for a loop.
Yeah, I think this is a good intersection for jiu-jitsu. I think like, it's important for us as men to keep growing and expanding, and keep like having experiences that move us forward in new ways, and challenge us, you know, both mentally and physically. Because if we don't, it's death. Like, what was going on for you when you were like, I'm going to do jujitsu? Like, I remember you calling me going like, yo, I'm thinking about doing jujitsu. I'm doing jujitsu now. Like, what do you think?
I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what happened. My I got into jujitsu, like, and I gotta use this phrase: jujitsu saved my life. Literally saved my life.
My dojo used to have a shirt, "Jiu-Jitsu saves lives."
And it does. And I'm gonna use myself as an example. Um, so let's say 6 years ago. Um, Actually, let me go back a little bit more. My youngest daughter, her name is Amaya. Her mother and I were married, Nicole. When I first met Nicole, Nicole had a son. His name was Tyrell. So when I met her, he was little. He was basically like a year and a half. And so I started dating this woman. You know, we fall in love. We end up getting married. We had a daughter, so he was my son. He had never met his father. So I raised them. Uh, I had a daughter, brother and sister. Then I had another daughter, my oldest daughter. So, so we have the kids. And fast forward to when he's 20, I had a really, really tight, close really good relationship with him. We would love to go see UFC fights, and we would watch football, basketball. So we did all these things. And 6 years ago I remember Super Bowl Sunday, I get a phone call that you need to come over because something bad happened. So I get up, I get in my car, I drive down to my ex-wife's house. At that time, she was my ex-wife, and I see the police, I see all these things. He was at a Super Bowl party in the same complex where we used to live. Underage, he was 20 at the time. What kids do, what I did at 20, we drink, we hang out. So he was drinking. He got into his car. He drove. He had just learned how to drive stick shift. He drove probably less than a half a mile, like a quarter of a mile, out the complex, made a left, go up the street, high rate of speed, texting, hit a tree, ended up dying. He died on the spot. So I dealt with this, and it was very difficult. It was it was surreal. I wrote an obituary, and the whole thing was like a blurb. I was like in a daze. So after I dealt with all this, you got to go back to the real life. I took a week off of work. Next week, I went back to work. I didn't tell anybody anything about work, and I kept on going. So I'm basically busy trying to take care of everyone else, finding a therapist for my ex-wife, finding one for my daughter, and I'm working. But at the same time, it was affecting me mentally. So one day I'm walking, I'm in Simsbury, Connecticut, and it was a Saturday. So I'm driving, and there is a mill, this beautiful building that looked like loft offices and apartments. So I pull in there, and I'm looking at the building, and I happen to walk downstairs, and they have a couple of officers. There are musicians down there playing. I hear music, and I walk by, and I see Gracie Farmington Valley, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, Krav Maga. So I went and I spoke to a guy. The guy says, "Oh, here, I'll give you the number of the owner of the school. Give him a call." So I thought about it, and then I said, "You want to know something? This would have been something that would have been really good. I would have done with my son, and I have so much anger and all this inside of me that this might be a good outlet for me to use." So basically, that was my introduction to jiu-jitsu. So as soon as I start in the school, um, the physicality of it I liked, but I didn't realize that the bonding with other men
Yep.
at a almost Neanderthal level
Yep. Yep.
was going to basically help me immensely.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, it was 30 days free, you try out. So I went into every class. I had no clue what I was doing. And I was basically shark bait. I'm a bigger guy. I go in there and work out. I'm getting my ass kicked and getting thrown around all over the place. And it was almost like therapy. I would basically go back the next day and I'm sore, and then go back the next day. So after a month, I said, I think I want to do this. So the jiu-jitsu community, especially the school, it was a little strange. It takes a good 6 months for you to be accepted. Like, oh, this is not a guy that's going to come into our school and just quit.
Yeah.
They realize after 6 months, oh, this guy's going to stay. And I have developed great friendships, great friendships from the jiu-jitsu community. And the community is so small that I could be somewhere else in Connecticut, and I would run into someone and they said, oh, then you train at GFB, or then so it's been great for me. It literally saved my life, and I'm going to tell you how it saved my life. One of the things that I learned in jiu-jitsu, for such a long time, I was getting my ass beat.
Yeah.
I was always on the bottom. I was always in side control. People were always taking mount. I was trying to muscle everyone out of me, off of me. And at the end of the day, one guy in particular, and I got to give him credit, his name is Jason Lenders. He's become a really good friend of mine. He's one of my instructors. He says, listen, stop, take a deep breath and calm down.
Yeah.
You got to breathe, you got to think, and you got to get comfortable in difficult positions.
Yep.
And once you do that and you use that concept in life, it works. It doesn't matter how stressed I get in work.
That's right.
It's okay. It's good to feel pressure. It's good to feel comfortable on your back. It's good to feel comfortable when you have to basically play defense. It's okay.
Yeah.
And once I learned how to calm down, how to slow down my thinking, it's worked. It's worked with work. It's worked in my personal life when I have serious problems. It's worked. Listen, I bought a house and I completely redid a home. I don't know anything about construction. I took a huge undertaking. I bought a house, got a dumpster, and completely ripped the whole thing apart, and then put it back together. I did have help, but it did save my life. It did. It really, because I don't think if I had that, I would have been heading down towards a dark, deep place.
Yeah, Hector, I'm so sorry about your son, and I can really feel how painful it is. And part of what my mission has been to I'm wondering, part of our problem as men is that, when we get into these very tight positions, these there's no real space for us to express our emotions. We have to take care of our families. We have to work. We have this this, a lot of us do. We have this sense of, we have work to do. We have a kind of obligation, if you will. And that lots of times overrides our emotions, and we get into trouble when we're constantly bottling it up. And I've been trying to through my social media and the way that I'm moving in the world, show men that it's okay. It's okay to express the pain and the sorrow, and it's okay to express some playful side, and it's okay to express all of it. We're all good, and I do believe that jiu-jitsu has this immense power. There's something that you said it in this Neanderthal way. Not all experiences, not all jiu-jitsu schools are like that, and not all of us need that experience. But one thing for sure is that I think whether you're a man or a woman, that kind of physical context, that contact, that like deep sense of like touch, like even if it's rough, like, and coupled with this intense psychological, intellectual pursuit, when you're in that with other human beings in that way, it is very healing. It is very, very, very powerful. And I think it even transcends family bonds. We don't even do that stuff with our own brothers and sisters or sons and daughters. Like, that is a very unique thing. And it is very powerful and healing. It's like,
oh, absolutely. Listen, where else could you go? Choke another human being out and then basically walk out of the same place as friends. Like when you really look at it.
Well, in this day and age, that's problematic. But
yeah, when you really look at it, and it's basically, and it's taught me other things. It's taught me that if you want to have the beast mode mentality, you're gonna get hurt. You gotta learn.
And that's a metaphor. That's a metaphor for our whole lives. Like that mentality of being like a beast or what do they say, a savage, is only going to get us in trouble in the long run. You can't live that way.
Listen, but in the jiu-jitsu community, a lot of the jiu-jitsu community, drill. Drillers makes what? Killers.
Yeah.
Drill.
Yeah, you know, I just think it's so fascinating, and I'm so happy that you found jiu-jitsu. Like I was saying to you the other day, like, who would have thought 40 years later, you and I would find ourselves talking about this practice in this way and having these shared experiences, even in a new way, and how they all kind of intertwined and connect back to us as being friends, being men, and loving the world. You know,
it's great. The only thing that I regret is you've been doing this you've been doing jiu-jitsu for what, 30 years?
Nearly 30 years.
What I wish I would have found jiu-jitsu much earlier in my life. I think it would have benefited me. I think I'm excited that I found it, but I wish I could have found it much earlier in my life.
Well, I you know, sometimes I actually have felt that way too. Like when I started when I was 24, I thought, man, if I only started this when I was 10 years old. And it's so relative, man. But like, you know, maybe had you have started it then, you wouldn't have continued, or worse yet, you would have gotten an injury that would have put you out. In those days, it was, I mean, if you think it's rough now, it was really, really, really kind of, and I don't think it's the golden years like of jiu-jitsu. I think it's like, it's the archaic times. It's like, you know, I don't know, the time of the Black Plague, if you will. You know, for me, I think that jiu-jitsu, like a lot of people get it wrong. Like, it's supposed to give us the courage to be softer in our lives, to be more gentle and more loving and caring, because if it all goes south, you got the tools to protect yourself. Like, you know, deep in your heart that like you're comfortable being uncomfortable, so you can be kinder and more loving in the world.
That's true. I do agree. Some people train for different reasons. Some people train because they like to compete. Some people train out of insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
Some people train just you know, it gives them something constructive to do. And I'm going to tell you something. In the little time that I've been doing jiu-jitsu, the majority of people that I run into are really nice, decent human beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. It's such a beautiful art. Man, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so happy that I know you. And thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Like I said, I'm extremely, extremely happy of our experience. I talk about you all the time. I tell people, I, I tell people, and you know, some of my friends in my school said, "Listen, we got to go. We definitely got to go to New York, and we have to stop and see my buddy at one of his schools."
It's good. I would love to meet your extended family. And we're jujitsu brothers and sisters. So
Oh, absolutely.
All right, my man, let's wrap it up. Thank you very, very much. Love you, Hector.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Listen, this is a great experience for me. This is my first podcast. You know, you sit here and you smile. You do these all the time. You're like a pro at this. So initially, when I send you that text, I said, you know, what topics you want to cover, and you're like, you know, relax. You want things to basically flow normally.
Let's
But
just
yeah,
talk like we're friends.
yes, yes. I'm very, very, very happy that I did this. I wish you all the best of luck. I hope that things in New York turn quickly, especially regarding to this COVID-19, so you could get back all your schools back open, and we could actually go and like sit down and have like dinner somewhere where we don't have to be wearing masks and social distancing. So hopefully that day will come soon.
Thank you, man. Love you. I'm so proud of you, and I love the man that you are. Appreciate you.